Thank you for your time. My name is Betula, and this is Shooting from the Hip. There's something I'd like to quickly get out of the way. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet On It, Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud, a thought exercise, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we are prone to using adult language and expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information, in the hopes that you will find it fun and interesting and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now on with the shit show. Slim, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So on this week's episode, we're gonna cover a subject that's very near and dear to me. I actually tapped into these ideas when I was very, very young, very little, but it was only presented ever at that time as like basically like mysticism and not real. And what I'm talking about specifically is we're talking about the energy systems of the body, particularly as it relates to QiGong, the Dantian systems, and then we're also going to touch on the chakra system from Kundalini Yoga, only because I think they overlap really well with one another. In fact, I think they're derivations of one another. So now, having said that, I'll start by asking, like, how much beyond whatever I've ever spoken to you, have you ever had an awareness, say,
just in the periphery of like some artistic media, like you might see like a kung fu anime and they'll talk about like the 5 systems.
Oh, right.
It's very periphery.
Right, Street Fighter has it. They have those like energy balls. I think Mortal Kombat does something.
Oh, yeah, the projection of ki.
Yeah, energy and stuff like that. So, I mean, for most of us, particularly here in the West, our exposure to it is meant to be purely entertaining. But there is a very interesting reality to all of that stuff. So whether or not you buy into it or not, that's entirely up to you. But what we will start with, first of all, is Qi and QiGong. So I'm just going to read something really quick, and then we'll kind of like jump in and try and break it down. So Qi and QiGong in and of themselves, they're part of the Chinese culture, and they're part of the East Asian cultural sphere. Now, Qi is, it's one of those weird things that no matter how much we in the West try to define it, in terms of Asia, for them, there's no, like it kind of defies a definitive description of what it is, right? So, but we're going to try it. So it's often considered the vital force of any living entity. And the word Qi in and of itself, meanings include like vapor or air or breath, right? And is often translated as vital energy, vital force, material energy, or energy, right? And in a metaphysical sense, right, of course. So I often, especially now as a mature adult, to me, a lot of what they might be referring to is the 5th element, ether. It could be a reference to that as well, right? So that I think that, again, we've discussed this in other episodes, but where this idea of vital energy or material energy or vital force, that these things are all reflections of this idea that the entirety of reality is built upon these things. And again, it was popularized by George Lucas and his use of it in the Star Wars movies and everything else Star Wars, and he referred to it as simply as the Force, right? So it's an super interesting thing. Anything you'd like to add since
Oh, I was thinking it's kind of interesting because it relates to like this idea of orgone, which might just be another word of like, oh, there's like this continuum of ether or energy or like consciousness. It just seems interesting that so many different traditions want to come back to this point because experientially it's real, especially if you have like long histories of meditative practices.
Right. So then it's clear this idea, no matter how much it's kind of dismissed by mainstream material reductionist scientists, that the reality is it manifests in kind of the strangest ways, and historically speaking has been part of the human experience. And you mentioned orgone, Wilhelm Reich. So there's a lot of examples, not just Eastern but Western, where this the ancient Greeks, they called it pneuma. Right, so there's all these ideas about this very thing, and so so at least with regards to traditional Chinese medicine, it's the underlying kind of principle, and not just in medicine, Chinese martial arts as well. But it's not just Chinese martial arts. In Japan, they refer to it as Qi, and it's also manifests in like meditative practices and martial practices, right? Cultivating and balancing qi is called QiGong. So that's a really super simple explanation, QiGong. But QiGong is, again, much like the martial arts. There's a variety of types of QiGong, but all of them use basically postures, but they're moving postures in conjunction with breath, and then intention, and intention in this case meaning like where you place your awareness throughout the course of the practice, right? So, which we'll get to later on. But for now, so does that make sense, everything I said? So Qi is life force, and QiGong is the cultivation and balancing of that life force.
Right, it's like an interpersonal relationship with your own energy.
That's correct. And you connect with, because the energy's like, it's not just your personal energy, it's also a conduit to universal energy. So it's not just this individualized kind of thing. It's something that exists individually but collectively too, right? Within literally everything. So the Taoists refer to the universal Tao was formed by primordial chaos, right? And Tao created the yin and yang, which created three types of qi, right? This is according to Chinese medicine, or traditional Chinese medicine, rather. The three types of qi are primal, mystical, and inaugural. The aspects of the Tao, primal qi, is equal or is created the Tao of the human world, right? And mystic qi created heaven, and inaugural qi created the earth, right? So you can look at qi as the fundamental building blocks of everything. So everything stems from qi, right? So that includes you, me, everyone, every living thing, right? So, and that's according to some of the earliest Taoist scriptures. One in particular is called the Command and Admonitions for the Family of the Great Tao, and that was written in, or we don't know when it was actually specifically written, but on record it was from 255 in the Common Era. So that would have been about basically like just after year zero, right? With the first couple centuries of year zero.
Yeah, this is like Roman Empire.
Would have been, yeah, it would have been like within, say, the last 1800 years. It would have been 1800 years ago or 1700 years ago, 1750 years ago. But there are other scriptures that go back even further that are like 2,000 years before the Common Era. Right, so, but again, once you start getting that far back, it's kind of harder to verify. But the traditions have been around essentially as long as humans have been around. So the macrocosm Qi is considered the building blocks of the material world and everything in it. So again, much like ether, orgone, I think that all those could be used interchangeably. And it's this unseen, immeasurable, active flowing through all active thing, flowing through all living things, and in part generated by everything. Everything contributes to it, but it moves. It's not static. It's part of the cycles and the flow of everything. So not only does it make up everything, it's also what provides all the movement within everything, right? So Qi moves equally well through physical and metaphysical realms. So it's not limited by anything, because it creates everything. It is everything. The ability for Qi to move and circulate freely creates connections between everything and the universe. So I often say we're a direct extension of the universe, and it's so again, that's not accidental. I take that from these traditions that I've been aware of since I was in my teens. Right? Everything in the universe is connected. And sense of changes in Qi flow, mutual resonance is equal to balance and harmony in the universe. So what you're doing is seeking to balance yourself within the context of the much larger, universe made up of this fantastic energy, right? All right. So anything you'd like to say before we move on? That's a macrocosm kind of thing. It's everything from the scale of universes right down to subatomic stuff, right?
Yeah, like the way we talk about interconnectedness, if someone were to rationalize it, I feel like they would at least have to admit, like, this idea that we're an extension of the universe has to be true. Like, we're within it, but we wouldn't be here without the laws that govern it. Like, you can't just say, oh, this is not realistic. It's part of reality.
Reality. Okay, so I often make the argument that as much as it may be an illusion in terms of experience, it's real.
Right, like someone who's practicing Tai Chi at the park, for you as a bystander watching, it might seem like they're focused, but to the extent of that focus is going to have like life-altering consequences for this person. That's why they do it, because it does bring some sense of peace. If that's what energy is.
I think what you'll find is that even within those practices, it's more than just a sense of peace. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. But we're definitely going to dive deeply into that. So I'll just move on into Qi in terms of the microcosm. And it's the circulation of flow within the human body, right? And it's the basis of Chinese medicine. So the Chinese medicines, the traditional Chinese medicine system attributes like dantians, which are energy centers, and then meridians, which are the pathways that the energy moves throughout the body, right? So for in terms of how we as humans approach it, the Taoists believe that if Qi is blocked, it can become stale and lead to illness. So that's why they have these practices of cultivation. It's to, so think of it like things like acupuncture, QiGong in itself, that these are practices, Tai Chi Chuan, these are practices where the idea is to keep stimulating the flow and movement of this metaphysical energy, right? So, and in failing to do so, then it can lead to all manner of health-related issues, right? Qigong's, some of the earliest texts exist from the Han Dynasty, and that's the 2nd century BCE. So 400 years before the command and admonitions for the families of the great Tao, right? So like I said, there are tons of treaties with regards to it, but then trying to verify how far back that goes is kind of difficult to do, right? Because like, again, it's the same information with maybe slight changes to the information. So like um, the scriptures are kind of copied and then promoted throughout time and stuff. So we don't know actually how back the concepts go, how far back the concepts go. We can only date how far back the actual physical scriptures that they appear on. But the ideas could go, again, like I said, a couple of thousand years before the Common Era. So so that's, again, super interesting that it's been there since our earliest origins. So chi flow determines health and lifespan. Transcendence, or the idea of becoming an immortal, which was very popular, especially in early Chinese culture. It was, again, something that the emperor sought, that they all wanted this idea. They all wanted, to experience or to become immortal. And they have cultural traditions of the Taoist immortals within China. So I think, and I'm not sure which came first, but I'm not entirely sure that it even matters. And then I've come across studies that suggest that like meditation and breath work actually lengthen the telomeres, and telomeres within our cells determine the length and duration of our lifespan. So there is some kind of reality to it. Whether or not it actually makes them immortal, I don't know.
Didn't that study say something about how the stresses that were put on the body were still present, but they're like dealt with differently physiologically?
I can't remember. My memory's too short.
That sounds like something I've seen too.
Yeah, no, because I should have probably sourced that study, but having said that, I'm not sure that it matters nearly as much to be accurate as in terms of what it referred to. And it referred to the idea that through the use of breathing practices and meditation, that you could, and then you could contribute to positive health and lengthening your lifespan. And it was measurable because they could measure the length of the telomeres. So it's the, how much of it is hearsay, but again, within the study, it was super suggestive that you can have these incredible positive effects, right?
I think at least reasonably we could argue that these behaviors that do require the task positive network, and it does limit the amount of like random thoughts generated. So like,
but breath work and meditation themselves are a way to minimize the effects of stressors like anxiety and stress, like of day-to-day living. So in and of itself, you can find a method by which to to not just increase and balance out your own energy, but it's also a way to address practical real world concerns, like how you manage your anxiety and your stress, right? Like, so there's overlap, right?
Yeah,
So,
like even for someone who would be very reductionist, they could at least see the benefits to certain behaviors.
well, I know a lot of reductionist scientists who speak highly of like breath work and meditation, but they only come at it from a clinical kind of, here it allows for people to alleviate stressors. It provides like, again, this training to breathe correctly, or to breathe biologically correctly, which means that like, you're only talking like, from as little as 2 to maybe 5 breaths a minute, whereas the average North American, and it's a high number, breathe 15 to 17 breaths in a minute, right? So it's this idea that through breathing you can ameliorate the stress response, and then check this out, and as a result of breathing poorly, you can amplify stressors and anxiety, right? And most people just, again, it's one of those things, most people just simply take it for granted that somehow they know better. What are you talking about? I already breathe. I don't need anybody telling me how to do this shit. Well, if they experience stress and anxiety, it could be a super easy and cheap method to be able to deal with it, right? Which most people, like, you would think that they would gravitate towards that, but
I think if a tradition would hold these standards to be like, not standards, but uh, these practices to be beneficial, if they held that belief for years and years and years, generations, there might be something to it, at least on a day-to-day experiential level.
right. But what we're talking about is like amplifying chi within the body and the practice, and that's what qigong is, right? Like it revitalizes your chi. So their view is that it's something like you come into the world with a certain amount that's kind of innate to you, and then through these practices, what you can do is you can increase the capacity for the chi that you naturally carry. And then anytime we consume anything from animal products to vegetables, that we're also consuming chi, right? So all that contributes to, like, vitalizing the chi that already exists within you, right? And then you use the method of practice as maintenance, to ensure that it's moving freely and flowing in the way that's beneficial for the individual, right?
Yeah.
Does it work? Has that worked so far?
No. That's part of the definition of qi, qigong.
Right, qigong, right, which is the training method for maintenance and balancing and cultivating qi.
Does it directly translate to like cultivation and use?
Well, it literally, I think the translation is almost literally like breath work, right? Like, so again, we use, you can get caught up in the terms and stuff like that, and we cite them for accuracy and to show that where they come from, but I don't think it matters what you call it, right? It's almost, I would almost go so far as to say that it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. That what matters is that is the training, is the act of maintaining and trying to cultivate greater chi, right? And again, we use these words because they're the ones that we have available to us to try and express this idea of something that kind of sits on the verge of defying any kind of descriptors, right? Because we call it energy, life force, all this stuff, and none of those accurately, completely encapsulate what it is. It's just everything, right? So the Taoists refer, like, you can't talk or know the Tao, you can only experience the Tao. You can, like, you be the Tao, you're in the experience of it. But as soon as you start to articulate it or intellectualize it, then you're as far away as you could possibly get from it, right? That it doesn't exist in that. It only exists in the actual cultivation. So you're doing the breath work, you follow the methodology, right? You show up, do the work. That's it, right? So we'll move on to, because there's so many subtle forms to it when you look at the history, and we won't be touching on all of them, but the ones that are really super interesting and fascinating. So there's a form of it which is called Neidan, and it's referred to, or it translates as inner alchemy. It's breathwork, meditation, and visualizations that can lead to self-transcendence, enlightenment, immortality, and transforms the mortal body, right? So this practice, again, it's a very specific practice, a form of qigong, this Neidan, and it's the one that that the monks always strive for, right? Like where it's the liberation, it's liberation from the self, and then a more direct connection and experience of the universe at large, right? And you do that through through these practices of, breath work and meditation and visualization, right? And we're going to get into the specifics of that a little bit further into the conversation. So part of that inner alchemy, the Taoists use sexual practices to balance qi, right? So again, it's such an evolved practice that it has so many different elements and aspects to it. And sexuality is for particular groups like Taoists is a component to their practice of balancing qi. Some practices include absorbing qi from sexual partners without expending their own. So it's kind of like sexual vampirism. But I think that in the course of intercourse, that what it allows for them is to extend the circuit. All right. So if you think of yourself as a complete circuit to cultivate this energy, that when you're engaging in sex with somebody else, now you can expand the circuit to include the energies of somebody else. And then if you, depending on your disposition, you may very well be trying to consume as much of their qi as possible without giving up any of yours. So hence the term sexual vampirism, right? So Taoists, as much as they use sexual alchemy to try and facilitate these effects, they also practice forms of celibacy and, for men, semen retention as another way of cultivating greater forms of, or cultivating a more profound qi, right, in their system. So
Yeah.
so you can see where, I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's many methodologies in terms of trying to realize this, right? So, and again, I can't speak to any others beyond the breath work and meditation and visualizations, because those are the methods that I employ, right? But in terms of like this very idea that like you could use sex or the lack of sex to produce the effect, again, it's, and remember, all of this is ultimately for health regeneration, to look and feel forever young, to be long lived, right? So I can't speak to like the reality of that because I don't know. I don't know any Taoists. The only Taoism I'm aware of is what circulates the internet and what exists in books. So beyond that, I don't, because I don't know any actual Taoists, right? So if you're an actual Taoist and you're watching this, I would love to have a conversation with you. Anything you'd like to?
I was going to say, it makes sense that this isn't something you could exactly define, because it's an experiential thing. There's nothing that you could bring out of that and then put into words that are precise enough.
Well, but even when you think of like the using sexual practices, wasn't that the foundation for orgone energy? It was harnessing the orgasm. That's what Wilhelm Reich was talking about, or that ecstatic moment, right? That you could have, that you could have that energy have a positive effect, or that somehow it would produce a type of energy that would have a healing effect, all right? And so regardless of how you may view these ideas, it was always for to promote better health and longevity in life, right? So anything else you'd like to add to that? Like,
oh, I was just saying, like, it makes sense that it wouldn't be something you could directly share, but it's something that would give you at least a better quality of life.
Right, and imagine the time that it came from, where people didn't understand the reality they're experiencing in quite the same way that we do. Because then, again, part of our failings usually is we look back on the past and we reflect with our modern day sensibilities, when you should be looking back at it and going, can you imagine what was going through their heads as a result of, trying to understand better why they're here. Like, again, it's those pesky questions, right? What does it all mean? Why are we here? And in a very roundabout way, all of this stuff contributes to people trying to make sense of it. And it must have provided enough sense of a better sense of reality that it kept being practiced and pushed, promoted into the future, and it's managed to survive for well over 2,000 years, right, to make it to the modern day.
Yeah, that was something I brought up earlier, because I always find it interesting when traditions have, or when cultures have tradition that span out of their culture. Like, over time you'll see, like, there's certain beliefs that are not replicated, but you see them over and over again. It's because experientially they're so true that it's unnecessary to have the culture surrounding it. It just has to be known, like, hey, you spent time on focus, on self-integration, like these qualities, like, you have a much better life. But seeing people who are, like, in their state of focus, no matter what time you're in, it's like, that seems like magic. When they're that ingrained in doing the work they're doing, it could be written off as, like, masterful work, or you could just say, like, what they're going through is something so unique that it can't be reduced. It also can't be experienced until you're in that place that they're in, and that's going to be uniquely you. So it's not like a specific cultural thing. It's like,
right, that's
humanity.
right. It's transcended culture and borders. Now these things, these ideas that we're talking about, like QiGong and dantians and chakras and all this stuff, it exists virtually in every country on the planet. There's some level of an awareness, and particularly here in the West, like, it's way more commonly understood than not. I mean, there's a lot of people who have no idea what this stuff is, but, and again, in a peripheral way, because of, like, entertainment and stuff, there is some level of awareness of it. And then you get into those who are actual practitioners of it, that it exists probably in every major urban center on the planet, right? There's some form of practice of it in one way or another, right? So having said all of that, so we started with the idea of of this life force, breath, pneuma, ether, life force energy, however you want to characterize it, and then methodology of for maintenance and further cultivation of it. Now we're going to get into the actual energy centers of the body, at least in terms of the way that traditional Chinese medicine looks at it. So they refer, as far as they're concerned, there are primarily three dantians, and they refer to them as cauldrons. So that, like, these are a place where it's a vessel that you fill up with the energy. You could just as easily call it a pool, three pools, and one feeds into the other two, right? And then, the circuit, if it followed the cycle, then it feeds right back into the first one. But again, that it's part of the Chinese medicine, and meridians, these are the pathways of the flow of this very energy. So for the sake of our conversation, we're just going to identify them really quick, because there's only three. But again, within every system, and depending on who you ask, that these cauldrons or pools or vortices of energy, that these might be the more significant centers for it, but they're not the only ones. That there's some systems that promote the idea that they exist across the entirety of the body, right? So and again, when I say that, these are not physical structures of the body, right? These are energy structures that you can experience. To what extent, you have to practice to find out, right? So we'll start with the lower dantian. It's the first one, and it's referred to as Jing, right? And it's just below the navel, between the navel and the perineum. So just think that cavity in your body, right? Just say like an inch or two below where your navel is, but in the center of your mass. So there's the chi high point and the I can't remember its name now. Huyen point, which is from the perineum, which is like your pelvic floor. So if you can imagine, like where those, if you could draw lines where they intersect, that would be the center of the lower dantian, Jing, right? And it's often called the golden stove or the elixir of life field, or the sea of chi, right? By developing the elixir, by refining, cultivating, and purifying essence Jing into vitality and chi, we use it up as we age, and when we neglect physical, mental health, to avoid stressors and stuff, when it's all used up, you die. Right, so it's the one that a significant part of they use actually a specific method called Dantian breathing, where they place their attention into that region, and then using breath work, they try to realize that region. So then, as a result of that, there are experiences which we're going to get into momentarily that you can have as a result of that, right? So you replenish it by practicing QiGong or Tai Chi or meditation, concentration, and yoga. It builds up the abundance of Jing, and excesses of Jing move into the middle dantian, and then from there into the upper dantian, right? So when you're in the practice of the dantian breathing, where you're focusing to fill the sea of chi, or this golden stove, or the elixir of life field or life force, that when you do that, when you go through the practices, and this much I can verify because I experience it every day, that you go through it's a mix of sensations. It's not a single sensation. So it's a combination of coolness and warming, heat, and maybe cramping might be too strong a word, but like a tug on internally, right? And tingling sensations, almost like electrical, right? That because it's hard to express it in language. It's just that you have this experience of it, and the better you're able to place your attention there, and you realize it, like you feel that region, the region like the cauldron. So it's the thing that you fill with the chi. When you have a sense of it, and as it's filling, you have these experiences. And according to classic traditional Chinese medicine, those are good indicators that you're on the right path, right? That what you're doing is you are excuse me, you are harnessing and cultivating greater amounts of chi. So again, it even though the dantians don't exist as physical structures in the body, experientially they exist exactly where they're claimed to be, and you can experience them in a very direct way. It's again, it's all a result of sensations. Now you want to attribute it to how, like, the effects of the breath work and the meditation and the focus on the nervous system. Sure, I can't explain it other than to say it's very palpable. You feel it, right? So like I said, for me, I just find it really fascinating. So it's part of the reason why I'm always motivated to do it, because I'm surprised, like, that you can even experience these very things, right? So I find it, like, say, super fascinating and incredibly motivating.
That does sound really nice.
It's cool. It really is cool. Like, you know, like but in a very personal way. Like it's your experience. But the, you know, when you think of the practice and the amount of people who do it, then clearly it's not a person or a specific type of person. It's all people who can experience this stuff. Now, what does it lead to? I don't know. I can't. I've been at it for a long time, and all I really get is this fantastic sensation. But I also feel really good, like all the time. Like it's not that I don't feel bad, but I never get hung up on the bad feelings because, again, I can turn to this as a way to sort of, kind of like, to not allow them to be predominant and to kind of like move them out of the way. So it's not that you ignore the shitty feeling. You just suddenly, it's not the focus anymore, right? And as a result, then you end up feeling good. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you also have like it's not only that you have a baseline that's more accepting of like trouble in general. It also seems like when I say baseline, I mean like throughout the day you're just doing better than typical every time you practice. But
Yeah, I'm what I find is it actually, like I said, it's motivating, but like I have a very specific kind of methodology that I apply, and like so I do it the first thing in the morning. But if I got like an empty 10 minutes, I'll just go into it just in the middle of the afternoon. Like I have a moment that I can steal away, and I'll just go through. I'll go through some of the different breathing techniques, right? So I don't. And I never count those. Like I only count what I do in the morning. So that 35 to 40 minutes I do in the morning, that's the only one that I count in terms of practice. But throughout the day, every chance I get, I'll employ the breathing practices and stuff, and try and integrate it into stuff that I'm doing that's not related to it. So anyway, and so that's how I approach it. But again, everybody has to, it's the kind of thing that you have to figure it out for yourself in terms of how you're going to do it or not do it, right? Because remember, there's a lot of people who just treat this as like, it's kind of a quaint idea, but that's all it is. It's not really, there's nothing substantial about it, and it's not rooted in anything really super meaningful, right?
That's strange that people would have that perspective, because we all know there's this classic line like, "Oh, take a breath." It's like, that fucking means something. I've heard this from Andrew Huberman. If you take a deep breath in through your nose and then you do an additional little huff at the end, like kind of like that, it's supposed to calm you down. If you do that like 3 times, personally, I feel very calm. It makes sense if you have a methodology of using breath work. It has long-lasting, drastic effects.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman, I love his podcast, and he's actually covered, and he comes at it purely from a material reductionist science angle, and he's covered the subject of meditation and breathing more than a few times. So I strongly recommend, if you find this interesting, to source out his channel and listen to what he has to say. Again, you'll suddenly see the hard science of it's very compelling, right? The kind of thing where you go, shit, man, maybe I should be doing this sort of thing on consistently and regularly throughout, not just one day, every day, right?
I was gonna say he's one of those scientists you can actually go, oh, okay, he's an authority on this.
Well, but he's somebody who understands it, whether it's intuitive or intentional. He's purely objective, and he doesn't allow for his own biases to influence his judgments.
Right.
He bases his judgments on what do you have in terms of empirical evidence and then what conclusions can you draw from that empirical evidence, right? So again, very thoughtful, super interesting individual who I'd love to have a conversation with. But having said that,
I was going to say it's interesting because he is absolutely an authority figure, but he doesn't choose to
Well, he's not flagrant with it. He
Right.
doesn't beat you over the head with it. What he does is he presents it in, again, a very thoughtful, meaningful kind of way. I love it. I love his work, right? So we're not going to gush over Andrew Huberman anymore here, but but we'll move on to the second Dantian, which is referred to often as the middle Dantian, and often called Qi, or the vital energy, or vital force energy, and it exists at the level of the heart, right? And it's often called the Crimson Palace, right? It's for storing spirit, which is like Shen, and has respiration and the health of the internal organs. This cauldron is where vitality, Qi, is refined into Shen, or spirit. Qi heals and revitalizes organs and improves health, right? So if you're trying to figure out where that exists, it's you're just above your nipple line. That would be where you would find your heart, right? So
the sternum?
Yeah, but it sits just off to the left. It sits just slightly off to the left. It's not dead center, right? So anyway, so that's referred to as the Crimson Palace, and it's the tributary that feeds into the upper Dantian, which is Shen, and it's at the forehead, between the eyebrows, and sometimes it's referred to as the third eye. There's some who disagree that it's not the third eye, something completely different. So that would be the pineal gland, for those of you who are listening. So again, depends on who you're listening to, and but like I said, it's often like there's conflicted views as with regards to the actual position, whether it's actually the pineal gland or a separate energetic structure, because that's what these things are. They're energetic structures. Like if you had a cadaver and you went through it, you wouldn't find like, oh, here's the upper Dantian, here's the middle one, they don't exist like that. They're energy constructs or structures that are part of the energy system within that very traditional kind of view of what we are, right? So and to me, we're like I guess that's not accurate. I was going to say cyclotron, but because what we're doing is because when you look at Qi, they talk about the microcosmic orbit, and so it's the way the Qi moves through the body. So it moves like this. So if you think like from the top of the head so there's a toroidal field around us, right? So think a donut, right? And in the center of that donut shape, that's where you sit. And so the sides of the walls are where the energy kind of pours out, and it rolls over, cycles through, and comes back up from the bottom, back out to the top again. So
like a North Pole, South.
Right. But it's more descriptor of the way that the energy flows. So, and not only does it flow like that, but then within the body itself, it also has structures, and you could think about it like river tributaries, so that one, huge lakes feed into, or little rivers feed into huge lakes, which feeds into the oceans. So it's this idea, the movement of the energy, right? So within these energy centers, again, you can have these super interesting experiences. But getting back to Shen, the upper Dantian, it's sometimes called the muddy pellet, and I couldn't find an answer as to why they refer to it. But this cauldron is where the Shen, or spirit, is transmuted into wu wei, or emptiness, effortless effort, emptiness. Shen energy provides intention, clear, calm thinking, planning, memory, and good decision making. And then if you buy into this idea of the Akashic record, or that everything that there is to know and ever worth knowing already is accessible, it's out there in a metaphysical kind of way, and that if there's an infinite number of you and an infinite number of realities, that you can access their experiences. So then you can, as weird as this sounds, that you can open yourself up to their intelligence or their areas of speciality, and then now you share that with them, right? So, and again, I hear myself say it, and I'm like going, I've never experienced anything like that, but again, and it's mostly anecdotal, but often I hear others speak to that end, right? So, and again, I sit on the fence. I don't know what to make of it, right? Like, I'm just going here. I know that experientially I can feel these different energy centers in my body. I have like a palpable sensation, and when I place my attention or my awareness in those very places, I get a sense of, I get a physical sensation, but I don't know what to make of it beyond the fact that I'm having this physical sensation, right? Like, just, right? So again, I find it super interesting, right? So,
do you find that well, a lot of people might say it's a nervous structure, or a nervous, what is it called?
Part of the nervous system, like the vagus nerve's often associated with like the very things that we're talking about, right? So it's the primary nerve that innervates like all the organs in the body and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's called the peripheral nervous system, where
right?
It goes throughout your body.
Yeah, there's the central one and then the peripheral one.
Right. Some people might attribute it to that, or like maybe the microorganisms throughout your body contribute. Like, there's many ways to go with it.
I think.
But experientially, what is it like for you? You mentioned it.
Okay, I was just gonna say, people will offer up any kind of explanation, and I'm not entirely sure that they're accurate. But I don't know that they're inaccurate either. My personal feeling is that because you experience it as a physical sensation, that the nervous system is somehow involved. Now, and from that conclusion, you could probably conclude then the nervous system is an active part of whatever these energy bodies are, right? Like that in terms of physical structures, the nervous system is connected to all these things. So, and then the sensations, like I said, I've often heard it described that if you experience cooling, you can experience warming, you can experience them all throughout the practice, or just one more specifically than the others. You get tingling sensations, you'll get a sense of pulling or tugging internally, right? That again, kind of, you go like it's an unusual experience. It's not such a gross experience that you're overwhelmed by it, but it's this odd thing that you experience, and then you go like, what is that?
Yeah, it's strange because it sounds like you're putting yourself in a state of focus, and in that focus, you're not able to see, but like sense in a way, internal.
I find that if I just let my mind wander, I can have those experiences, but they're more pronounced when I put my attention on the structures that we're talking about. So what do I mean by that? So like if I'm doing like form of Dantian breathing, I'm breathing into the lower Dantian, the Jing. What I do is it's kind of like a reverse QiGong. So think about it. So as you're having it's a very natural and normal breath, and as you inhale, your stomach expands. When you get to the end of where as far as your stomach can expand, then you feel slight pressure, like low, and it'd be in the perineum, like where it's pushing down, like it pushes the energy there. And then as you exhale, then you slowly empty out your lungs, and then your stomach collapses in, and then you get a sense of that center, like, and then this, like I said, the sensations become more pronounced when I do that. So when I cycle through the breathing, I try to give each center an adequate amount of time, right? Like, and again, I do it by feel. I don't like sit here with a stopwatch and go, although I do use a stopwatch, but that's just so that I can get so I know how long I've been at it, right? So, but I don't use it as a way to mark off here that you're gonna, this much time for this much time for that. You do it all by feel, right?
Do you get the sensation that some of this energy or the sensations themselves tend to like move or
Yeah.
re-express themselves?
No, but you do get, like I said, like the tingling, and or it feels kind of like a spark, like electrical spark. You can feel that move across, like it's usually the torso that you usually feel, that I experience it in. Sometimes I feel it traveling down the lengths of my arms, right? So, but again, I try not to spend a lot of time explaining it, although what I want to do is to understand it better. But I don't, particularly in the course of the meditation, I don't focus on that. I don't like the fact that you're having all these sensations is an after effect, right? What I'm focusing on is my technique and making sure that I'm relaxed and that I'm following the technique accurately, and I feel my way through it. I don't. It's not mechanical. You feel your way through it, right? So
Yeah,
that makes sense. What I'm saying?
yeah, you've mentioned before, like enforcing strict choices during it. That's gonna mess it up. Like you have to actually be there, experiencing it, focusing on it.
It has to, and here's another thing, it has to be a very natural experience. Like, you're not supposed to be forcing the breath, you're not supposed to be, all of it should feel effortless.
Yeah, because I think everybody I know that has done things like this has mentioned if you focus on it, you lose it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to you be aware without focus of the sensation, but you do have to pay attention to the physical breath work.
Yeah, I sometimes, like I say, what I'll find is I'll realize I'm smiling, or I might have or in the midst of it, like when I'm transitioning, like from an inhale to an exhale, I might giggle, like and there's nothing funny that happened it's just suddenly I find myself like, but that's just my experience with it. So, and again, it's the kind of thing that keeps bringing me back to it because it's such an elated state, and it feels so good. So that's why I actively engage in it, and it's why I've been so serious about it for like the last 15 years, because it's such a great experience. So in terms, no matter how stressful life is, that it becomes this, at least initially when I first started, it was the only time where I wouldn't feel shitty. Right? So when I started really getting into it and sort of kind of becoming more proficient at it, it would be the only break I would get from all the psychological kind of stress and anxiety, right? It was enough that it would keep me motivated to wanting to break, because at least it was a break. Here, I could finally break with this shit. Like, I don't have to keep enduring this, the stupidity of my own, thinking and the things that I thought were meaningful and had value, and they were all transient. None of it I should have treated none of it with any kind of like meaningfulness. But again, because I didn't understand, I suffered as a result of it, and I suffered horribly, and it was largely because I hate to go back to it, but instead of viewing everything objectively, it was was trapped by my subjective worldview, and it fed into my anxiety and stress, and like I said, initially this was the only way to break from it, right? And at least it was a pause, and then it actually encouraged me to, like, I would find myself just breaking into it just to alleviate some of the shitty feelings when I couldn't distract myself from it enough, right? So and now I don't. It's not why I do it. Now I do it because it's just such a positive experience to have. I go every day. Every day, at the very least, I have this as a positive experience. So what it's done is it's worked its way into almost the entirety of my day. And it took years. It took freaking years. But like I said, I'm super grateful for having had the experience. And now, I never thought I would ever cultivate a gratitude for the worst experiences of my life, but to see them as just, look, They're just a stepping stone. It was just something to learn from. And that here, part of my personal evolution was, you know, coming to terms with those things and realizing that if they wouldn't have occurred, I might not have come to these conclusions. I might not be where I am currently. And where I am currently is a wonderful place. But here's the reality. It was always a wonderful place. The only thing that prevents you from seeing how wonderful it is your subjectivity. But if you're objective, then suddenly you go, even when it's bad, it's good. But most people can't wrap their head around that paradox. Right? So, anything you'd like to say?
It's starting to sound like something that should be done in PE. It's like, all right, 15 minutes, breathing exercises, let's go. Like, the benefit to everybody if they just have time to calm down throughout the day. We don't have that kind of lifestyle here. Like, it would be nice if we did. But it's like, no, I want to watch TV, that's how I calm down. Are you calming down or are you avoiding? This seems like radical acceptance.
Yeah, this is a way to directly confront that stuff and not and then find a way to kind of pull the knot apart. Whereas anything like absorbing yourself in a particular TV program or you know, drinking a box of wine or whatever it is that your preferred form of distraction is, that's exactly what you're doing. You're distracting yourself so you don't have to actually pay attention to the things that are making you suffer. So this is a great way to confront all that psychological stress and distress and then liberate yourself from it. Right? And I can speak only anecdotally how much of a difference it made in my life. A huge difference. Huge difference. I'm so glad that I actually discovered it at all.
Have you taken any forms of the Dantian method, or not method, but any methods that they would use?
No, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I want to get into like some of the according to the traditions and folklore, the talk about like, I don't know how to say this, but it's like superhero powers. It's like the like these abilities associated with the cultivation of chi. So you can call it chi magic if you like, I suppose. So there is a rich tradition, a rich history of it, but I've never experienced anything other than when you see those demonstrations, somebody like breaking bricks with 2 fingers and stuff, that it kind of defies explanation. But all that stuff is like entertaining, and even though you're watching it, you can't be 100% certain of what you're actually seeing, right? Like that, you know, what if they pre-prepared the bricks? What you know? I'm not saying that they would go out of their way to fake it, but they could.
Right.
But it could also be something that's a genuine expression of the very thing that we're talking about, which is the idea that you can cultivate chi powers beyond the psychological and physiological benefits of any kind of chi practice, right? So, and again, this stuff is super interesting, and I love this stuff because I love the martial arts. So the idea of, you know, look, within Tibetan traditions, there are monks who are masters of meditation who, again, it's anecdotal, but you know that they have such command of reality that they're able to press their hand into stone surfaces and leave a handprint. There are some who claim that the monks can run from mountaintop to mountaintop, and they're not talking about them running through the valley, like down the mountain, through the valley, up another mountain to get them. They're leaping from mountaintop to mountaintop. So Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and if you've never seen it, watch it. So this is the kind of chi magic that's, or this idea that's grown up around these practices. Now, whether or not there's any truth to them, I couldn't say personally. And so I just rather leave it kind of ambiguous and not try and like definitively say that yeah, it's true or it's not true. It's just whatever it is.
I've heard stories about people pushing their hand into a boulder and leaving a print.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Oh
like,
God, wouldn't it
jumping
be?
mountain is cool, but I don't know, man. Pushing your hand with like into a boulder, that is just incredible.
Right. Okay, so that's cool that you find that stuff super interesting. So, well, I'm going to start identifying out of the folklore some very specific things, claims that were made that you could do with chi power. So, the idea is that you transmute your being into a being of pure chi. So it would be the complete unification with the Tao. So you can interpret it that to mean that somehow now you're in the direct experience of the universe. You're not separate from the experience. And then as a result of that, you're capable of universal travel through the universal meridians. So you can move through time, space. There's no limit, right? So you don't need a physical ship or a time machine. That you are the ship and the time machine, that you have the capacity to do it. But again, it's only if you can completely unify with the Tao, right? At least that's in terms of like how the Taoists look at it. It also includes the ability to master and bend to your will all manner of creatures, insects, big cats, snakes, you name it, all of it. That they bend to your very will. Now, I don't. You know that George Lucas borrowed from this, right? So if you've watched any of the Star Wars movies, you know that he did. But again, I think it's just wonderful that he did it anyway. But the traditions clearly make mention that this is what they do. Other effects include the ability to resist the effects of edged weapons. So if somebody can't stab you with a sword or a blade, or cut you with the sword or the blade, can't penetrate your skin, right? In some Chinese martial arts traditions, they refer to it as a golden bell or an iron shirt technique, right? And again, other than much like everyone else, have you ever seen those YouTube videos where the traveling Shaolin monks are able to bend spears and they place the point end of the spear and to the jugular and notch here and stuff, and then just lean into it and they bend the pole?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, you've never seen that?
No.
Or they'll lay across like 7 or 8 spear tips and then get hoisted up into the air by their brothers, right? So again,
that sounds scary.
Well, but like in terms of the list of chi powers, you go like this kind of stuff's super super cool, right? So they can repair wounds rapidly. So even if they are injured, that they're able to and accelerate the healing. So a Wolverine healing factor, maybe not quite so fast, but something to that effect. Survive on a minimum amount of food, right? So that even if they had it like only had like a candy bar, they would need a bite, maybe like a single bite a day to get through a desert. It would be more than adequate enough. I don't know how that works, but again, they draw sustenance from minimum amount of food or no food, right? The ability to heal others from a distance, right? So
yeah.
Again, these are attributed to these chi powers. These are specifically what they imagine or what they suggest they're capable of, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza employs that distance healing in his seminars, and apparently, and again, I haven't seen any papers or anything, but anecdotally speaking, there are people who claim up and down that it's a real thing. So maybe there is a degree of truth to this stuff. How much? Right? We're just making conversation around it and trying to figure out, like, here, how much of it is like just absolutely like fiction versus reality, right?
Yeah, I have a tough time coming in contact with this material because for me, I find it interesting for narratives like uh, culturally popular things that are going on now, like TV shows, video games. A lot of this stuff will be integrated into that because of
Well,
traditions.
or already is, right?
Right,
It's because none of this is new, but it might be new to like some listeners and stuff, or that they've only ever had a peripheral kind of exposure to it, and it's usually through like some form of entertainment.
right. Even if it is entertainment, definitely check this stuff out.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's really
This stuff's
fun.
awesome, man. Like,
I grew up watching a TV show called Naruto, and they had like a bunch of different use of these magic systems.
oh, is that right?
Yeah,
I'm aware of
totally
it, but
fascinating.
I never watched any of it.
Oh, it was fun.
But to be fair, like to me, all the best anime was like in the '90s, right? It came out of like the late '80s, and some of the stuff was really like just racy as hell, like and controversial. Kind of understates just how radical some of the stuff was, but it was in terms of like entertainment, it was just like way out there stuff you'd never seen before, right?
Right, like uh, typically I have a hard time coming in contact with this kind of information, but when it comes to like TV shows and things like that, it's more digestible. If you spend time with somebody who has a pet and they love it to death, they'll claim their experience with that pet is so singular and unique, and the cat, dog, whatever, has its own kind of energy it gives off or personality. Experientially, I would say that's true. To what degree? Maybe there is some way that we could show body language, if you want to reduce it to body language, to an animal and then tame it in that sense.
Well, yeah, but here they're talking. They're not.
Yeah, they're talking about like direct control.
Yeah, like exercising direct influence over the animal, right? So I'm like, again, I've never really seen anything like that other than within like movies and entertainment. But in terms of like real life, I've never seen anybody suddenly, you know, just as an act of will bring an animal to heal, right? So anyway, I think now what we're going to do is we'll start talking about the cultivation of chi powers and what that's referred to. So advanced kung fu martial arts systems are referred to as I'm hopefully I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation, but Neijing. And it refers to a conscious control of the practitioner's chi or life energy to gain advantages in combat. Developed by using Neidan or internal martial arts or meditative practices versus like Weigong, which are external exercises. So these are internal kind of like methods of training. So in the traditional Chinese systems, they separate the forms of personal force. And so they separate it into two categories. One is, it's either pronounced li or lei, and it refers to the use of tangible external force, like that are typically generated from your muscles, like we see in MMA, right? Or boxing, or karate, or taekwondo, whatever, right? Anything where the force production is a result of mechanical action of the body. The second form of personal force is this Neijing, or it's often called Neigong, right? So it's different from QiGong. QiGong is a cultivation of Qi. Neigong is a cultivation of Qi for personal combat purposes. Okay, so it refers to internal force, advanced mental control over psychic energy, or Qi, right? So again, I've beyond watching people do something super impressive, like having a stack of bricks and then claiming that what they're going to do is, and then they do it. I've only ever seen it on YouTube, where they'll strike the top brick and there might be like 8 or 9 of them stacked, and it's the one that's the 5th one down that breaks.
Well, that is interesting.
Right?
I've seen people again. This sounds bad. They're there's a ramp beside them and a ramp on the other side, and for a moment of time, they have this truck passing over their abdomen, and they're fine afterwards. Which is like, if you told me that before I saw the video, I'd be like, "You're insane. No way, not happening."
Well, it's about okay. Again, it could be like something to do with the physics of like the two ramps and the position of the body, so the body's only momentarily suspending the weight. Again, that's a convenient way to explain it. Wait, what if there's something else more significant going on?
In my mind, the weight of a truck going over like a grown man's chest is gonna like absolutely break it. Like,
Yeah, I would agree, but from that episode that we did on human physical limits, we know that bone is 3 times as strong as reinforced concrete, and that you can actually actively condition the bone to become as strong as steel. Right? So,
so this might be like a physical approach instead.
All I'm saying is no. I'm not trying to explain it away. I'm just offering it up that, like, in terms of like within the natural limits of the human body, it could very well be doable. But then again, what if this has nothing to do with natural limits? That it's just the manifestation of these cyclical practices, like we're cultivating the cultivation of Qi, right? So within some systems of martial arts, they harness the force of Qi for combat and direct the Qi by will. The Neidan is invisible, and at the point of attack, one must song or loosen themselves to generate the energy to direct it through the point of contact with the opponent. The point of contact is a gateway to conduct the energy. So they refer to it as song, but it's defined as loosened or relaxed. So it's not a physical strike. Even though they are physically striking their opponent, they're not counting on the physical force that the muscles will, and mechanical force that the muscles and the body will generate. What they're doing is they're able to somehow translate that energy they've cultivated into the point of contact, and then it produces a physical effect. So you ever seen that where you see an individual get struck using and it doesn't look like it's a severely generated kind of, over the top kind of like swing of the arm. It's a relatively subtle and simple punch, and then what they'll do is they'll manifest a bruise on the opposite side of the body.
I haven't seen that. That's really interesting.
Well, again, it's just weird stuff like that. So I don't know what's going on there, and I couldn't speak to it beyond the fact that that I know that it has occurred, right? So you want to try and like dispel it and say that it's some kind of like delayed effect from a gentle punch to the chest, and now you get a bruise on the back.
Yeah, that's a strange thing. The positioning too. That doesn't seem like something you could explain away.
No, I again. So and it speaks to the people who do breaking, because there is a tradition within the martial arts where their focus is breaking, and it's usually stone. They'll bricks of ice. They'll do all sorts of things, right? Boards. We're all commonly aware. We've seen it within it's well established within martial arts, so that it's a common occurrence, even though it's maybe not nearly same kind of focus now. But these methods of training allowed for breaking, where guys are breaking baseball bats across their shins, or they're doing like crane strikes, this overhead strike where their fingers are pointed and they're breaking their fingers into a coconut. Now you can attribute that to like years of conditioning, so that they condition the fingers so they're super hard. And again, there's a physiological law that allows for that, but what if there's something else going on there? What if it's in part the physiology in training to transform the physiology? They're also doing exchange of force, like they're exchanging like physical force. I couldn't, again, I couldn't say definitively one way or the other than to say that I find it super fascinating, right? So, anything you'd like to add?
Ah, well, I would definitely love to see people breaking like cinder blocks and cinder blocks on top of each other. Like, there is some stuff out there that is culty that I won't touch on, or like I won't get into personally. I will touch on it. Like, there's
I
this.
again, I find all this stuff like really super interesting. Now, whether there's any truth to it, remember, there's a lot of people out there who would only be too happy to fool you into thinking
Right.
one thing, right? And again, charlatans abound, right? We live in a world full of fake assholes. They're everywhere, right? So,
Yeah, like there's some really fake martial arts out there, and
oh god,
honestly, no, it's so come on, it's so fun to watch. It is so.
it's just ridiculous. Like
This one guy's like, "Oh, I got a force field around me."
again, super ridiculous shit, right? Like, now, does that immediately dispel the truth of any of this stuff? Regardless of what the truth may
Right.
actually be, right?
I think it's interesting when it's in tradition and it deserves to be followed up. But when you see somebody who's faking it, you can just write that person off specifically.
I would agree.
Like
I
he's
would
like,
agree.
"Oh, I got a force field around me." Like,
Do
okay,
ya?
just run right at them. Like,
Just just pick up a pebble and throw it at them.
but like a lot of these systems have practical applications,
Right,
like
right. So,
calming.
but
There's
what we're okay, outside of the real psychological and physiological benefits, we've gotten into, I guess, the serious woo, right? But again, I love this stuff because I love watching Chinese and action cinema and Japanese movies about the samurai. To me, all this stuff, it's just fun, right? Now, I don't know that there's any truth to this stuff, and I don't know that that's relevant either. Whether there's truth or it's just complete fiction, who cares? At the end of the day, it doesn't make it any less fun. And so then when I see it presented and like entertainment and stuff like that, it just makes the entertainment more endearing to someone like me, right?
yeah, I've like if you look at these superhero movies where they're talking about like, oh, what if people could do this? It's like I feel like it's more a comment on humanity in a positive light that there's this Superman that will do this or that.
But there are traditions that state that the realization of this stuff is part of like our our traditions or our legacy of our heritage, and yeah, that these are capacities we have to reawaken in ourselves, that they're lost to us, they're lost in time. So if you buy into this idea that like that we're considerably older, instead of like a few 100,000 years old, that we might be millions of years old, and that there's been an infinite number of human civilizations that have risen and fallen. What if this was part of their traditions? And so this stuff is just, it's not even a memory. It's kind of like hearsay that of a memory of the ability to be able to do these things. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just speculating, having fun with it, because I think, like, again, this stuff I find super interesting. I mean, how could you not find it entertaining and interesting, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories was this one person. I forget their name. I actually forget where they're from. But there's yeah, no, did not do my research for this one.
It's okay, it's all
He's
good.
staring at the side of this palace from his mountainous cave that he's been living in for years and years. Hasn't eaten, and he stared at this one spot long enough that he started to like burn a hole through the place. I was thinking like that's incredible, but
That's a cool power.
yeah, no, it's an amazing story.
Yeah, no, it's whether the likelihood is it's just fiction or just this great, anecdote that's tied to some kind of cultural story, which is, again, to me, I don't, I think they illustrate the point that these practices do have a physical reality. Whether or not they actually have a physical reality is fantastic as the claims. I think it's a lot more subtle, and in terms of like the positive effect on your mental health and your physical health. So I think that should be the takeaway from all of this, that you can use these things to, again, realize yourself more fully, to find a way to manage and deal with the stressors, both physical and mental, from day-to-day living. So that much we can say with a degree of certainty is probably true about all this stuff. Everything else, it's all up in the air. So I like I said, I won't lean one way or the other, right, on that. So so if you're at all curious about the idea of how to unlock the Neijing through Neigong, the practice that we taught, that I'd mentioned, was song, and they define it like as a loosening, and loosening of what? It's just you. So it could be like, you could equate it to being relaxed, right? The term song can mean to keep one's mind and body loose and resilient, and expanding like the consistency of a cloud, right? Like, so again, even though they offer that as to try and relate to it, I don't know how the consistency of a cloud works and how it expands. I don't know. So how do I translate that into my ability to keep my mind and body so loose and resilient, that and expanding, that I'm able to then use the chi in a combative kind of way? I have no idea how any of that works. Suffice it to say, though, that maybe the fact that they chose the word song might be telling, that it might have something to do with, perhaps, with frequency, right? And again, I think there's an episode where we talked about sound frequencies, and it could be, what if it's the hertz range of the mind, right? And we know that, like, as soon as you break 30 hertz to a minimum of 100 hertz and beyond, that it's characterized as super consciousness. What if all this stuff's aspects of super consciousness? I'm not saying that it is. I'm going.
Wait, are you saying like 100 hertz? Because that's like the bottom of our hearing range.
No, I'm not talking about hearing. Okay, let me be clear. So song, when they use the term song, that to me it might be suggestive of sound frequency, but it might transcend sound frequency. What the idea is that the mind and body becomes loose, resilient, and expanding. Well, the only biological, psychological, and physiological state I'm aware of that's like that is what's referred to as super consciousness. So that's the modulating frequency of the brain now. It's functional frequency, which is the 30 hertz range to 100 hertz, and some claim it might even be 3 times that much. It could go 400 hertz range. That's super consciousness. Well, what if in the course of that super consciousness you can awaken the capacity to do these very things? I'm not saying that you can or you can't. I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
I got the impression, because when you say song, I'm thinking like SONG.
Well, that's the word they use. But what if it's just a reference to frequency, and they don't mean sound frequency. Right. They're talking about maybe the frequency of the mind.
Like there might be synapses firing at a frequency. It might be the elimination of those random. You know how there's like non-conducive noise in your brain that will. Oh shit! No, I don't know enough about this to actually like get in deep about it. But that would make sense. That there is a certain frequency in your brain that's like a firing of a synapse, or.
Well, there's different brain states, right? And this brain state is referred to, and most of us experience all of them under the 30 hertz range, because that includes like our waking state of mind, when we're asleep, when our mind's wandering, all that stuff. They have assigned cycles per second that the brain's operating at. Super consciousness starts at 30 hertz per cycles per second to as many as to as much as say 100 hertz cycles per second, to even 3 or 4 times as much as that. And that's what the researchers are aware of. But they, and again, they're only aware of that because they tested what they considered Olympic level meditators, who were people who had like something like 50,000 lifetime hours of meditation to be able to enter that state. Well, what if those very few? What if they can do shit like this? Everything that I've ever heard from any experts, like lifetime practitioners, people who have 50,000 lifetime hours of meditation because they've been doing it since they were 8 years old, and they're my age now, right? That they will always tell you that it's not the point. The point of doing it is not to have access to that stuff, and some of them in a very sly kind of way suggest that you could, but that's not why you do it. Right? You do it to experience the connection with the direct experience of the universe at large. So now you're aware of your how separate you are from the entirety of everything, but now you also have the direct experience of everything. So you're completely tied to the Tao. It's indistinguishable from who you are. That's why you do it. It's to unify with the universe, right? That's the purpose. Not to have these abilities to do all this shit, because that's somebody who's still grounded in a material existence. Somebody's trapped by again, I hate to characterize it like this, but the stupidity of their own thinking. That it somehow that you have the capacity now that you can experience, well, the entirety of whatever the universe is. So I don't even, and I hear myself say those words and I have no idea what that actually means.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I still think about these breathwork meditations as a way to step away from like subjective bias and just get this feeling of appreciation. Like for me, it's an emotional thing. It's not necessarily like.
I think that it's all those things. I think it's like, so it provides everything that you just finished saying. It gives you the capacity to manage your emotions, to come to terms. You just change the nature of your relationship with your subjectivity and your biases. That it's because those don't go away, but you just stop treating them with any kind of significance or importance. And then what you start doing is favoring the objective experience and reason and wisdom. You become a philosopher king, right? Well, in the pursuit of that, maybe you're open again after like 50,000 lifetime hours. And I think I tried to count how many hours I have in terms of meditation. I think it might be like 6,000 or 8,000 hours. I can't remember now. But a couple of years ago, I tried to actually count since like 2009. So if I did an hour, because when I first started doing it, I was doing an hour a day. So I was like 365 days in a year. I'd never miss a day, and it would only come to like 3,000 or was it 6,000? I can't remember specifically the number it came to, but like way below the requirements, like way.
So that 10,000 hour mark, that's still going to be like a milestone for you.
Well, but that's still a decade off into the future. All right.
Sorry, I guess I'm saying that a little.
Right. So, well, to me, again, that doesn't matter. It's not why you do it. Right. I do it because, like, again, it's one of the things now I've come to enjoy to do. So. I wish you all could experience that, right?
I was going to say there's a level of there's a level of interconnectedness with other people you'll have as a byproduct of removing like personal subjective ego. But it would be amazing to see what kind of like uh, direct connection you could get from just a lifetime of meditation.
We would only be wildly speculating about it. So I just want to close on the Jing and Neigong by just citing this one more thing. That so this relaxed, expansive, resilient state that they refer to in terms of song, lucid, they equate it to, think of a cat before it pounces, how it's relaxed and concentrated all at the same time. And the greater the song, the minimum use of the li or lai, that physical mechanical force. And then what happens is that the less of that you're dependent or reliant on, the greater the release of the Neijing force. So that's unleashing qi. So that's the nature of it. That's how it's described. So you can read into that all that you like, right? Like, I'll leave that to you.
Well, it sounds like it takes a certain amount of. Well, no, they outright say it. There's a certain amount of li you have once you expend it all.
No. The li is the mechanical force. Think of an MMA fighter.
Oh shit! Sorry.
Right. So qi is what you're the statement you made. Qi, that if you expend it all, you're dead, right? So li or lai is the mechanical force that you produce in course of combat, right? And Neijing or Neigong is the qi that you can release and use in personal combat. So what they're saying is the less physical force you rely on, and the more you're like the big cat who's about to pounce, that you're relaxed and concentrated, that when you do release the Neijing, that it's greater, it's even significantly greater with the minimum amount of li or lei or mechanical force. Produces the maximum amount of energetic force you can unleash in combat.
I was getting the impression that with very efficient methods to use this key, you're able to expend less of your own, but still get like exponentially greater.
The relationship is the more reliant you are on mechanical force, the less Neijing or qi force you're able to apply in combat. So the minimum amount of mechanical force you use allows for the maximum amount of energetic force that's unleashed. It's an inverse relationship. Right? So if you punch as hard as you possibly can, get a minimum amount of qi force applied. But if you do like a 1-inch punch, you can send the guy careening across the floor into a chair, and then the chair slides for another 6 feet. Right? Ever watch Bruce Lee do the 1-inch punch?
Yeah, I've seen that a few times.
Okay, so is that an expression of Neijing? Or is that just the guy like kind of being compliant and going, oh, it's a show, put on a show? I don't know, you tell me.
Going from a punch that's just 1 inch away into the guy's chest and he goes flying back, it's a spectacle, no matter what it's from.
Well, okay, but okay, here then maybe the question's asking wrong. Which do you think is producing the force in that 1-inch punch? Is the mechanical action of the lei or the lai that his body's like the force it can produce as a punch, or is it a result of Neijing or his Neigong that he's able to actually energetically exchange enough energy that it produces all the force that causes the guy to stumble backwards, fall into a chair, and then the chair slide for 6 feet across the floor?
I hate saying this, but I really don't know. I'd love to
I don't know either.
I would love to be punched by Bruce Lee. Just figure it out or die.
But he used to do some astounding stuff. He would leap. Like, I think he was. I can't remember now. I knew this before.
But he did jump pretty far.
Yeah, I think he was only like 5'6", and he would jump. He would like throw jumping kicks that would be well in excess of like 6-7 feet.
Right.
Like they'd get himself that far off the ground and deliver a kick, and the amount of force you produce on kicks on like somebody holding a kicking shield or a weight bag was pretty significant, right? So I don't want to contribute to making him more mythological than he really is. To me, he was an example of somebody who realized his physical potential fully, right? And it wasn't just physical. It had to be in conjunction with his mind and spirit. So to me, he's representative, absolutely representative of the struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit. And the end result is you produce a body that's capable of doing astounding things that are well within human limits. Now, how would you attribute that 1-inch punch and what he could do with that to like what might actually be going on there? I don't know, right? And he's too long gone for us to be able to kind of put it to a test or put him to a test. So, and I don't see anybody making that claim anymore. Any of you 1-inch punchers out there able to send somebody careening across the floor? I'd love to have a conversation with you.
We gotta get video of that.
Right. Okay, so I think in terms of like QiGong, Dantians, and then the mystic powers associated with the martial arts as a result of Qi and that sort of thing, I think we've kind of accurately covered. Now I'd like to move on to the chakra system of Kundalini Yoga. And again, depending on whom you ask, there are some that state that the energy systems, and we're going to focus on the 7 chakra system, but there's some who claim there's like 144, but in total across the body. But this, again, it speaks to what the traditions were saying, or what a lot of different sources were saying within those traditions, that there are main centers for energy, but the body's essentially covered in smaller, more minor energy vortices that actually produce this stuff. So, and again, the very thing that the traditional Chinese system talks about in terms of dantians, we see it within the Indian systems, a Kundalini yoga, which is again based on the 7 chakra system or vortices of energy. Now, the chakra translates as wheel or circle. So you can see now where the idea is that it's a cycle. It's all about movement, right? Are various focal points used in a variety of ancient meditation practices, collectively denominated as tantra, like that. So when they refer to it, that's where the idea of tantra comes from, or the esoteric or inner traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, right? So again, it makes for super interesting kind of like their view, because there's 7 of them, and each of them are much more specific than the dantians. But I'll just get right into it. So the 7 centers of human spirituality within the human body, in which metaphysical energy flows through the body and through the energetic centers, regulate all internal functions. Example that they cite are boosting the immune system, regulation of emotion, direct experience, which what we were talking about, and the elevation of consciousness. So again, you see immediately that they're talking about the same sort of thing, right? Regardless of whether it's QiGong and Qi or the chakra system.
It seems like... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it seems like they're trying to attribute certain categories to what they experience.
Well, considering China and India are neighbors, I think no one should be surprised that there's overlap then in terms of these traditions.
Right.
at least geographically, because they're close enough to each other that you could see where there'd be a lot of transfer of these ideas and that sort of thing, right?
But it would make sense to me that we would have as few as three centers for this energy, up to like 144, because a lot of people do come to the realization like there's no like discrete part. It's all one continuous part of your body.
Right. Well, there are some traditions even within QiGong where they don't stack the energy centers, and like they do it horizontally. That there's three, like one in the front, one in the middle, and one in the back of the body. Right. So again, it's all dependent on whom you're asking. Right. So I don't know specifically the specific details that they're important. I think, again, if there's any takeaway from all of this, what's important is the idea of the practice and the benefits it brings to the individual in terms of like their mental and physical health. That it doesn't get any simpler than that.
Yeah, like I think it's Kundalini yoga where
Kundalini. It's Kundalini.
For Kundalini yoga, I think this is the one where a lot of the time you'll spend stretching out part of your body, focusing on the muscle, on the, I don't know, explain it. It's like a more physically realized interpretation of what's going on in your body. Like you feel it more.
Right. So and again, in traditional yogic practices, you place your attention in a very specific region, but the way it's done here in North America, they kind of reduce it to like exercise, like, right? So again, it's a spiritual practice that's been kind of regulated by the fitness industry to be something just for, physical personal benefit, right? So the 7 centers of human spirituality within the human body, in which metaphysical energy flows through body energetic centers and regulates internal functions, right? So that much we see the same kind of overlap, that they're, in terms of like real world benefits, they're mental and physical health benefits that come with it. So, and again, within the yoga practices, breathing is a significant part of any yoga practice, right? And then where you place your awareness, and then how the effects that it has, right? So let's get on to the chakras themselves, and we'll discuss their function, and there's frequency associated with it, and placement of the chakras along the spinal column, and they go from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. So the first chakra, which is referred to as the root chakra, and it's the one located at the base of the spine, and it's the one where you're grounded. It's where grounding occurs, and it's associated with the musical note of C, right? And the tones in terms of sound frequency are associated with it are 128 to 256 to 512 hertz. And it's the regions that it primarily influences are the spine, the legs, the feet, and the physical body, associated with physical health and well-being. Energy open, so when it's open, it produces feelings of safety, fearlessness, right? When it's blocked, you get low energy, develop problems in the legs, feet, and hips, and spine, right? And it corresponds with the Dantian system, and this is the base one, right? So it's the first of the 7. The second is the sacral one. It's just below the navel. So your pelvis is part of the sacral part of the body, right? So it's just think of like where your tailbone is, right? Okay, so and then musical note D is associated with it, and the hertz range, or the hertz tones, are 144, 288, and 576, and it has a specific effect on on your bladder, kidneys, reproductive organs, and lower abdomen, associated with emotional body, sensuality, creativity, center of feeling and sensations, and experience of life through five senses. When it's blocked, the problems with kidney and the bladder and your pelvis can become issues, right? The third one is the solar plexus, and that's at the region of the stomach. And it's tied to confidence, and the musical tone of E is associated with it, and the hertz range, or the hertz frequency is 162, 324, and 648. And again, it's tied specifically or associated specifically with the stomach, liver, intestines, digestive system. When we behave in accordance with our individual beliefs and faith, it's often associated with purpose, integrity, and personal morality, right? So again, blockages there can lead to like basically piss poor behavior, right? So, but and again, you see that like it has a lot, like the solar plexus has a lot to do with decision making, strength against negative outside influences. When it's blocked, you suffer from bad digestion, liver, pancreas issues, cowardice, fear, or judgment, or defensiveness, right? Right. So again, it's more, they more specifically kind of spell out what specifically the effects it has on you, but it works in the same way. So if there's any blockage, it has a negative effect on the entire system. So when you use yoga or kundalini yoga as a method of practice, then you maintain the integrity of the energy system and the flow of energy, right? And again, it's not any different than the Dantian system. And so again, I thought it was worthy of mention. So we'll move on to number 4. Or is there something you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do they have any use of music in their healing ceremonies?
I don't know. I don't have really a ton of experience in yoga. I'll be real honest with you. I never really liked it all that much because I never liked the static poses. And so martial arts were more in line with my sensibilities. But I have a brother who swears up and down to the benefits of yoga and doing yoga, and he loves to do it, right? So, and he uses it, and he's a guy who's a weightlifter, and he uses it to complement his weightlifting. So there are, so again, this illustrates the point that I've made before. It doesn't matter which system or what methodology you apply, that there's one for every sensibility, and then you just find the one that works within your sensibilities, and you may find that evolves as you evolve through time, right? So no better time than now to start. And remember, I don't think it matters specifically if you're practicing QiGong or Neidan or yoga. You just find one that works for you, and then do it. Just show up, right?
Yeah, it seems pretty interesting that throughout any system that deals with this idea of like internal energy, the use and manifestation of it, they have like multiple methods to go about using it. Finding it.
Yeah. So then you as somebody who's considering doing it, it gives you lots of room in terms of finding a method that works for you, right? And you find one that just works within your sensibilities, and then you just show up, right? That's all any kind of form of training is. You showing up and doing the training. Just show up and do the training, right? So, getting on to now, we'll move on to the 4th chakra, which is the heart chakra, and of course it's located in the chest, and it's associated with compassion, the musical note of F, and the hertz tones of 182.25, 364.5, and 729, and is directly associated with the heart, lung, circulatory system. When it's open, you are loving and expressively emotional, compassionate, and then it when it's open, it's not blocked. It allows for the purification of the other chakras, right? Cleansing negative emotions, deep sense of connection and beauty to everything, forgiveness, empathy. When it's blocked, you're unrelatable, excessive moodiness, emotions, lack of sympathy, codependence, bitterness, heart-lung related problems, right? And so now we'll move on to number 5, unless there's something you'd like to say with regards to heart. No? Okay, cool. So the 5th one is the heart chakra, or sorry, that was number 4. The 5th one is throat. And of course it has everything to do with the throat and the vocal cords. And it's associated with expressiveness, right? And then it's musical note that associated with the note G, and its hertz tones are 192, 384, and 768. So it's the throat, the thyroid, the neck, the jaw, and it's your authentic, true individual voice and its expression, the key to verbal communication, associated with a sense of timing, and to create and project ideas into reality. Vocalization's ability to connect to spirit realms, the ether, and intuitive abilities. When it's blocked, lack of self-control when you're speaking, speak too much, and saying inappropriate things or out line, right? So again, they attribute significant abilities to this chakra, right? And all of them do. Again, you know, they have traditions where it leads to a better expression of you as the individual, or one that's beyond the limits of what you currently imagine yourself to be, right? Anything you'd like to say with regards to that?
I was thinking how the heart was a very, like, that's how I would stereotype the heart. Like, it's very geared towards compassion, all these things. But if you reduce it to what it actually is, it's like, or not actually is, but like what we know it for, it's like, oh, that's the blood pump. But we associate compassion with the heart, and I just think that connection is interesting.
Well, you know, I've often heard it say that, like, the heart, there's a field around your heart, right? Like the energy field. So we're layers and layers of energy fields. So what if by this very material practice, you're able to have a profound effect on not just your energy fields, but the fields that you produce, and then by extension, any of the fields that your fields might interact with. Again, it's a wild speculation, but what if that's, you know, spreading good vibes? That's what that is, right? Like, you get a good, you know, you get a good vibe off of someone. That's right.
Yeah, I typically am reductionist, but when it comes to these ideas, like, oh, there's at least minute energy sectors throughout your body, it's like, no, that is true. Like, we are partially magnetic.
Yeah, so again, I think there's a reality to this stuff, but how much, I'm not even sure if it matters or is relevant. The point is that there is a physical reality to these practices, and they do have very positive effects, and they're all health effects. So to me, then it just speaks to, like, the value of doing them.
Right.
That you should actually be doing them, right? Like, it should be a part of who you are. So, and you know, food for thought, something worthy of your consideration. So we'll get on to the last two. So the 6th chakra is the third eye. It's the center of the forehead, and it's associated with intuitiveness. And its musical note is A, and the hertz tones associated with 216, 432, and 864. It's directly associated with the brain, the nervous system, the ears, the eyes, the nose, and in it you unlock the power of the mind, self-healing, life course correction through willpower alone, visions, intuition, perception of subtle dimensions outside of the 5 senses, wisdom, clairvoyance, clairaudience. So it opens you up to a whole host of potential capacities. When it's blocked, you demonstrate a lack of clarity, rejection of anything other than material existence, sense of being stuck, poor problem solving, health issues connected to brain, blurred vision, insomnia, sinus issues, and nausea. So that third eye one, again, it speaks to like the metaphysical abilities associated with that we talked about with chi powers and that sort of thing, right? So, and the connection and the more of a direct experience of the universe at large, which when I hear myself say that, I don't entirely know what that means to have a direct experience of the universe, right? All I have is direct experience of, well, my physical self. Now, so I'm open to any kind of experience, but I haven't had one to make me think or say or speak to like this, that you have, self-healing. Although I'm super fond of the idea that the placebo effect, that you could find a way to induce it consciously. And again, in all those traditions, self-healing, so mental and physical are a significant part of it. Now, what's the reality of that? We know that the placebo effect is very real. What if this is a means by which you could activate it in a casual kind of way for yourself?
Do you think meta engineering would be a good term for that?
I don't know. You can call it whatever you want, but again, I think it's way too easy to get hung up on the terms.
Right.
Like
behavioral therapy might be another good way to put it, because
yeah, but I don't know if people are experiencing the placebo effect because of behavioral therapy.
Right.
Right. Like, so this is what I'm saying. I go, but these traditions clearly state that what you're able to do is you're able to induce healing, right? And we know the placebo effect's real. It's well established, we don't understand how it works, we just understand that it does exist, right? So can you imagine if this was the vehicle, the method by which you could unleash that? It would change the face of medicine. It would change the face of lifestyles lived by human beings.
Even through very minor methodologies, like just taking a breath and then that affecting your emotional state, that's also...
Yeah, but we're talking about something more direct.
Yeah,
we're talking about you're confronted with a serious health condition, and then now as an act of will and attention and intention and breath, you're able to induce the placebo effect to completely eliminate it, right? I go like that. To me, that there's tons of value in that, and that might, so if you're looking for a purpose beyond the mental and physical health benefits, that might be a motivation for why you do this. For me, it's not. I'm just seeing where this goes. So if it leads to that, that's great.
Right. Like the emotional spectrum, if you're able to take not control of it, but have an accepting view of it, you might be able to induce a placebo-like effect. Oh, I know I'm not doing well right now, but I know I will be better soon. How directly can you use the placebo effect on yourself?
I don't know. And again, this might, because even within the QiGong traditions and the Kundalini yoga, they both stated outright that you can have a profound effect on your mental and physical health, and resolve conditions. That's something I didn't, in my note package, I didn't get into, but all those systems of methods of training and meditation, all of them, virtually every disease process that's out there have been attributed to neutralizing. There's good studies that were done on QiGong that demonstrated that it neutralized type 2 diabetes, which I happen to have, right? So
was this a recent one?
These studies aren't that new.
Oh.
Right, so what they did was they had test groups, and then what they found, there was an unusually high resolution of type 2 diabetics in the use of this meditation. Right, this kind of mysticism to resolve a health crisis or serious health issues, again, if something is touched on by Dr. Joe Dispenza, there's other people out there who are doing it. So what we need is for those things to be vetted out in a definitive kind of way. But guess what? They don't invest any kind of money in studies to look into that, because basically the medical industry is about, I'm sorry, but it's factory medicine.
I hate to say
right?
that's a business.
Right. It's the business side of it that prevents for us to looking more seriously into this stuff. It's not because there's no value or that there's nothing about these things that might actually be able to overturn everything we ever thought about medicine. But that's the problem. It's a threat then to medicine. So why would they invest dollars, resources into researching it for the purposes of proving that it works, and then create a system by which people can practice individually that would produce the effect every time? They completely eliminate all medicine, right? To me, that's a super endearing idea. But like, again, the assholes in charge, they don't want that. They want to keep making money.
I think it'd be interesting to see benefits come out of a study, and then even if it's a minor percent of them have minor effects, like 12% of the group found that 12% during 12% of the study they felt better. It's like that's still a huge benefit. Why isn't meditation introduced in high schools or elementary?
Again, there are a lot of, in terms of meditation, there are a lot of studies, right? That's particularly in the last 50 years, because is it Harvard and can't remember the name now, the big Ivy League schools, but one of them even offers like mindfulness or a degree in mindfulness. I think it's Oxford, right?
That sounds like a cool degree.
Okay, but here's the thing. So it's not that it's invalid, but if there's resistance, that's resistance from those who profit from your suffering. You want to thumb up to the man? Start meditating. Take your own health seriously and figure this shit out on your own. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's just the way that you will end up doing this.
Oh, I thought you were just ending it.
No. I'm because we still haven't talked. I still haven't mentioned the seventh chakra, which is the crown chakra at the top of the head. So this is a good segue into that. We'll take care of that. So it's the top of the head, and it's associated with the idea of connectedness or connection. The musical note is B that it's associated with, and the hertz tones that it's associated with are 243, 486, and 972. And it's the upper brain, the nervous system, associated with higher states of awareness, and the ability to access the universal consciousness, awaken individual highest truth. You are infinite consciousness having a temporary material existence for the purposes of experiencing it here and now. So it's realization is what an open crown chakra will allow for. The realization of truth, awakening to inner peace and bliss, full enlightenment, the experience of the connection of everything, unconditional love, right? When it's blocked, you're closed-minded, disconnection to spirit, detachment from the self and world, caught up in your own thoughts, living in your head, oblivious, neurological disorders, nerve pain, mental health diseases, insomnia, depression, headaches, and migraines. So it speaks then to, like, since these are common and now we're in the midst of a mental health crisis, and the only solutions are pharmaceutical ones, were the pharmaceutical industry profits because, as a direct result of your suffering, that in conjunction with, I would just offer this up for anybody who's listening to this who's struggling with mental health issues, that maybe, just maybe, find a method of meditation and then commit to it and then do the work, right? Because again, we can see from the descriptions provided for the dantians and for the chakras, and we can say with certainty that these meditative practices that involve breath work and focus, concentration, and being present, they do produce physiological and psychological health benefits that might allow for you to alleviate yourself from the suffering that you are currently experiencing, that you don't have any kind of meaningful resolution for. You can have it. You can have it, and it's just a matter of you being disciplined and then showing up and doing the work and learning the training methodology, right? And then as a result of doing that, and ultimately, it doesn't matter which method you use. You just find one that works within your sensibilities and then apply it. And you apply it every day. Don't skip a day. And then, if there's anyone who's listening that actually follows up on my suggestion, I would strongly also suggest that you journal your journey. Date, time, every time you do it, what you experience, what you were feeling or experiencing mentally and physically beforehand and then after. And do that. Keep a journal. You might shock yourself if you can actually man up and do it for 6 months. You might absolutely freaking floor yourself. And go, fuck, this is astounding. How did I not know about this before? Well, no one's hiding it from you, but you got to actively seek it out. And what you're doing is you're leaning on authority to provide the answers to your problems. That means it's somebody else making a decision about your health, mental and physical. I'm not putting it in anybody else's hands. I'm not ignoring the value of experts, but it's not their health, it's yours. So you take command of it. It's your fucking existence. Stop fucking leaning on somebody else to provide all the goddamn answers. Governments, politicians, they're all lying, cheating assholes. Every last fucking one of them. And why do you think it'd be any different than people within the medical institutions and all the corporations that revolve around medicine or factory medicine? Come on. Like, I don't want to have to be aggressive, but I get tired of like people defending these institutions that only exist to serve one function, their own profit and personal gain. I go, you take control of your health. It's your health, mental and physical. And then you put in the work, right? And guess what? The outcome could be that you actually ameliorate all your suffering. You're able to move past all that crap and start living and experiencing a satisfying existence. Because that's ultimately what we're talking about. So even though today's focus of the conversation was QiGong, dantians, and 7 chakras, ultimately what we're really talking about is you, the individual, taking full responsibility for your own existence and stop putting it in the hands of someone else and stop dismissing and excusing your piss poor behavior. Right? This is where you man up. Right? So you either have granite testicles or cast iron vagina, and you show up and you do what you need to do. Right? And you save your own ass. To me, way more appeal, way more endearing. And I can only tell you anecdotally because I did it. It was a long, hard fucking road. But getting here, I'm so happy to be here. And I think that you would feel the same way too. But that's entirely up to you, the individual. Does that resonate with you in any meaningful way?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the anti-company.
Well,
part of that.
Well, because like I'm not dancing around that. Like I want to be really honest about that. they don't ever demonstrate anything but interest in themselves. And then what they give you a modest amount of, they offer up something in a modest way to sort of placate you so that you're like, well, at least I got something. You know, they're the ones who gain the most. It's not a healthy relationship.
Right. Like at a certain level, that's definitely true. I would say even at a more intimate level, your therapist has their own life. Your life is in your own hands. They may be helping you and you may be grateful, but you're not done once you walk out of that session. You go home, you work on the behavior you talked about with them, and then you also find other methodologies of expressing yourself,
Coming to terms with yourself, changing the nature of your relationship and with yourself.
That's most important in my opinion, because in the moment you're not going to have a chance to like take a breath, but you're going to have chances leading up to that. So if you can practice breathwork meditation, you can go to therapy, and then you get to the point where you're in the struggle, you already have that capability tempered into you now. Like the work outside of therapy really helps you.
I agree. I go, it doesn't end, begin or end. You need guidance, and you should defer to those who are willing to help. But ultimately, it always falls to you. I often state on this channel, I have no faith. I believe in nothing. That might be a slight white lie. What I believe in is I believe that every human can be. I believe in the potential of every single human that's on the planet. That's what I believe in. It's the only article of faith that I have. Right? So whether you're sitting there listening to this going, I can't do this, you're wrong. You can, not only can you do this, that you can exceed everything, all your expectations, but you got to be willing to show up and do the fucking work. Right? There's no free rides. Right? So you're willing to knock yourself out for minimum wage for an unsympathetic asshole who manager and authoritative figure at work, then you can find the time in the course of a day then to honor yourself. And to me, there's more value in you honoring yourself and realizing your potential, right? What do we often talk about here? That it's the struggle to unify your mind, body, and spirit, right? To push against every limitation that you can think exists. And then to grow beyond your wildest imagination and expectations.
I would say even at the lower limits, just to feel a greater sense of gratitude. That makes hell even a little bit nicer.
But this is the thing I'm trying to say. I go, why settle for the minimum?
Right. Shoot for the stars.
Yeah, man. And then, so wherever you land after that won't matter. Right? So, again, I believe in you. It's the only thing I believe in. You can do this. Or you can just turn your nose up and go do the stupid shit that you do to keep yourself placated and hide away in the little cubby hole and do all the drugs and alcohol or whatever it is, your distraction of choice to keep you not paying attention to your existence. Or you take up the struggle, you take up the cause, you go, I'm worth it. Right? I will struggle to unify myself, mind, body, and spirit. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. Can I get a time check?
2 hours, 18 minutes in.
Okay, way too long.
This was a long one.
I think this was a good one. I really liked in terms of subject matter, I really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I think that we beat that horse to death. So it's good and done. So in closing, I think, is there something you'd like to say in closing first?
I really like the tradition aspect of this. Like a lot of this is very historically based, but it's not directly factual. It's stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Like I'm way into narrative. I love listening to stories and the archetypes. If you're interested in like Jung's work and Freud's work, like that shit is right up my alley. And it's just interesting to see, at least at a, I don't want to say superficial, because it's not superficial. It's super fantastical. Like this idea that throughout history, there's been at very least stories of people with like greater abilities, and with these greater abilities, us as the readers want to see them do good things. That at least shows
100%.
that at least shows me like at our root we want to be good as society. This isn't just like, oh, there's one or two good people out there because they're taught to be good. It's like, no, part of our nature and biological imperative is to be good and generous and caring.
And yes, to sympathize with each other, to understand that we're all connected, that we're all one.
Yeah, stop being mean to those cashiers at wherever you're going
Yeah.
to yell at.
Yeah.
Be nice to the cashiers.
So in closing, I would like to say, question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. Seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding. Become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinker. Thank you for your time.